Hello, everyone. This is Dan Gramza, and welcome to dangramza.com Market Studies for Monday, March 16th. Well, what we see here is a daily chart of the S&P 500. If you're not familiar with these videos, the red line means sell, green line means buy, a dashed line means it's something that happened earlier in the week. And you can go to dangramza.com and you can watch the daily videos for the last 10 years, but you can look at the last few days to see how these lines changed over time. And what we see here in this market on Friday, it traded just above its buy level, and the buy side failed as the market broke to the downside. Dollar difference there in that market, just to give you a reference, is $950 a contract. Dollar difference between these dash lines is $2,350 a contract. So what are we looking for? We're seeing a nervous market, and it's continuing. Further movement to the downside depending on additional information, not only economic but geopolitical. What happens in the Middle East we'll see reflected here as the market tries to sort out how to respond to these events. We see the same behavior here in the NASDAQ market. Dollar difference, again, this traded above its buy level on Friday and failed to the downside. Risk management, as we talked about in the foundation course, is always critical anytime you expose your money to risk. The dollar difference in the dash lines, to give you that, that's $1,040 a contract, and the difference between the red and green line there is $2,740 a contract. Again, very similar situation that we saw in the S&P. In the Dow, dollar difference there in that market is $3,050 a contract. What do we look for here? This is a false sense of security. That's what I call that structure. And it's what I use, which I call behavioral Japanese candles. And it's got a possibility of a bullish move. Be careful on the short side. In the Russell, dollar difference sell to buy level in that market, $2,950 a contract. And again, this is a market that has that potential for turning around. I don't understand or see fundamental support for that. What about the currencies? Well, the dollar's been stronger. All this uncertainty drives capital towards a U.S. dollar. That's not unusual behavior. The dollar difference here is $300 a contract in the euro, and the euro stays weaker. Here again, it traded above its buy level and it failed to the downside. The Swissy also broke to the downside. Buy level has been lowered. It's going to be interesting to see if indeed that U.S. dollar stays stronger. Japanese yen, Mr. Yen is bouncing all over here, traded above its buy level and also backed off a bit. $275 is the dollar value of that change. But let's talk, and what do we look for? Well, we're looking for the U.S. dollar to stay dominant. The buy to sell level in our friend here, the Aussie dollar, $670 a contract. And I do look for further weakness, but it's approaching levels that buyers have entered before. So be careful there. Same thing holds true in the British pound. Sellers are here, but be careful about these levels that we're at right now. This is where we've seen those buyers enter. The difference in the dash line there to the sell level is $225 a contract, Canadian dollar, the loonie. Well, sellers are here with both hands in that market. But again, be careful here. This is at a level we've seen buyers before. Dollar difference buy to sell level, $320 a contract. Bitcoin, this is a market that has really been struggling. Friday was important and it failed in terms of trying to make new highs and sticking at that level. A lack of confidence, it implies a sideways move in that market, so we're not looking for any drama there. Difference, the dash line to that green line there is $8,650 a contract. Well, what about the 10-year notes? Whoa, Daddy, check this out. Yields have continued to increase with all the geopolitical events that we have going on, which means price continues lower. The dollar difference sell to buy level in that market, $906.25. Right here on Friday, it traded above its buy level and it backed off. It also failed. So dollar difference here in that market is $437.50. Check out the U.S. bonds, the 30-year bonds, same situation. Yields are increasing, prices are decreasing. Look for that to continue. Dollar difference sell to buy level there in that market, $1,500 a contract. Gold. Well, all this uncertainty that we're talking about, where is gold? Well, it hasn't shown up. We're seeing softness in this market. Be careful here. It really implies what I call a neutral zone trade, which is a sideways movement. Same thing here in silver. We're seeing a market really struggling as this market goes sideways. Dollar difference buy to sell level, $1,500 a contract. I don't look for a big day down or up on Monday. When we look at copper, China really hasn't shown up. And they keep saying that the demand is there. It's not reflected in what we're seeing. Sideways move is what we're looking for in that market. And when it comes to crude oil, well, we're seeing higher prices with all this uncertainty out here. However, it's not as dramatic as you would expect. And I think you need to be careful here on the long side. Dollar difference, that buy to sell level, is $18,040 a contract. Follow through, well, we're looking for additional pressure. This is what I call a false sense of security. So it's potentially bearish. So be careful here on the long side. Nat gas, the Strait of Hormuz also affects us, not just that 20% of global crude oil that flows through that area. And what we're seeing is a market that's getting softer. I don't look for any big drama up or down in that market, but rather a sideways move. Buy the sell level here, $1,200 a contract. Mr. Bean also trying to recover. It's in a neutral zone trade, broke below its sell level, but it popped right back up. So that was underwater going into Friday. Dollar difference there in that market. $550 a contract. And what do we look for here? Do we look for a big move? I do not. Look for a sideways move in that market. Same thing holds true for corn. I don't look for any big drama in that market. That difference here is also $550 a contract. Let's move on and take a look at wheat. There are some weather concerns when it comes to this market, but global supplies still seems to be there, and it's different than what you're seeing in soybeans. For example, a third of soybean crop is used to produce a biofuel. So there's a different demand structure than what you're seeing here in wheat. But buyers are here, but do they have the fundamentals to follow through? That's what's going to be interesting. The buy to sell level there is $1,200 a contract. Well, those are my thoughts for today. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to being with you again. And as always, take care.